Well, good afternoon, everybody. We've got another episode of Lunch and Learn today, and we have 7 chairs with us. Ben Holcomb, he's the creative brainchild of Sydney-based photography business. With nearly 30 years of experience, Ben is a multi-award-winning photographer who's been playing with all sorts of cameras ever since he left school back in the late 80s. And it's fair to say there isn't much he hasn't photographed. So including many of us here today at our chamber events over the last year. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you. All right. Well, we might as well get stuck straight into it. What I'll do, guys, is the way we'll do this today is that if you've got any questions on anything that, I talk about, what I'll get you to do, just pop it in the chat window. And then Stacey can just, when we have just that break between slides, Stacey can go, hey, can you just talk about this? And then maybe we'll unmute, we'll have a conversation, because there is only a few of us. So it is good and we can have a fair bit of interaction rather than just me rattling on for 45 minutes, because you probably, you don't really need to listen to me for that long. So anyway, let's get stuck straight into it. I've got a bit of a presentation I put together. The whole concept behind today is it's not really a photographic session. All right. It's a little bit about what I want to do is just how do we get better images? And the key ingredient to all of that is light. And that's one of the key things we're going to talk about today is like how to understand light, how to make it work for you. And I'll give you some examples. And we've got some stuff to talk about and some technology that you might want to put into your own systems to get better picture quality and stuff like that. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Play from start. Okay, so can everyone see my screen all right? Awesome, beautiful. All right, so we've called it Pimp Your Brand Elements of Photography. And what I really wanted to talk about today is just a little bit about me first. I hate talking about me, but I'll give you, it sort of gives you an idea of what I actually do. I should make up one of those ones where it says, those memes on social media, what my mum thinks I do, what my friends think I do, what I actually do. That is so true for a photographer, because people think you're off doing all these amazing things. And, realistically, this morning I was in a construction site about 30 meters underground at Rhodes Central in at Rhodes, photographing for them. So one day I'll be in the markets shooting Sydney markets. One day I'll be 30 meters underground at a construction site walking through mud. So it's not that exciting sometimes, but we do what we do. So I've been shooting for over 30 years. I specialize in commercial wedding portrait photography. I am an overall photographer. I don't just shoot one genre of stuff. I shoot a lot of different stuff. So we would normally have, not COVID, of course, we would normally have around 2,000 images a week going through the computers. I'm a Nikon school lecturer, so I run courses on photography for them as well as for myself. And then also I'm a multi-winning photographer with AIPP, so the Australian Professional Photography Awards. I've probably shot rough count about 600 weddings. So there's not much that I haven't seen in the years that I've been shooting. And that's just a few of the sort of stuff, the type of stuff that we could shoot on any given day. All right. So what I wanted to talk about first is just what is the key ingredient. Now, this doesn't matter if we're talking about an iPhone. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a compact camera or an SLR. The key ingredient to any type of photography is light. And we were obviously having a little bit of a joke about it before when we saw Jackie's nice little backlit situation she had happening there. But light is the key ingredient, and light comes in many forms. We have daylight, sunshine, we have cloudy days. Now, you'll see most photographers, most brides when they're going to get married are looking for a beautiful, bright, sunny day, whereas the photographers go, can you give me that nice high cloud cover, please? Because that is the best light you can get, that nice, cloudy, soft, natural light, right? We can also get some really cool light from windows. There's lots of light we can use these days indoors as well as there's I'm going to encompass this all into artificial light sources. That's another type of light. So artificial lights might be, studio strobe lights. It might be a little LED that you sit on top of your computer, but it's an artificial light that we're adding to this particular scenario to try and make it better. And so I've just got a few images on the screen there of just different types of light sources that are out there. Now, I mean, in one of the slides in a minute, you'll actually see what I use here in the 7 chair studio. Now, Normally my studio is set up out at the fringe, but because I'm in, lockdown like we all are, I'm in Blacktown. I'm stuck in my garage. So it's really not that exciting in here. But you can make a little studio up no matter where you are. All right, so here's an image. I'm just got some sample shots here to just talk about different types of light sources. So this one here is that nice, soft, natural light. Now you can see, if you look carefully, this is actually my youngest daughter. She's now 13. She'd probably have a conniption if she knew that I was showing these images on here, so shh, don't tell her. But you can see this. See, there's some nice little catch lights in her eyes, right? So what you'll find is if you can get that nice light source with those little catch lights in your eyes, people then look alive. Whereas when you don't get those little catch lights, you don't get something, the light source reflecting in off the eyeball and back again, people can look a little bit, dead's not the right word, but do you know what I mean? They just don't look bright and vibrant. And so that's what a photographer is always looking for, is how do we get that nice catch light in the eye? Right, here's an example. This was a commercial shoot I was doing. It was for Sennheiser headphones. And so this one here, all right, I'm using window light. So just natural light, no artificial light sources. You can see the light source is coming in from the right-hand side. All right, so I've got this nice light to dark across the speaker's face. And so what they were doing, this is the guys from Sennheiser headphones, and the whole premise behind their conference was they wanted people using their senses. All right. So for Sennheiser, they're all about audio quality. And so they had like a Black Star pastry up there. They had this wine company, and they were trying to get the staff to, I suppose, close their eyes and use their taste sensors and just really immerse themselves in that to then be able to, immerse themselves more in the audio side of things. So, that's the story behind that shot. So this is one of their presenters, and I'm just using that nice window light on the side to give it a bit of mood. All right. So here is another shot, right? So this is some kids. This was actually an event for Clarendon Homes. Now, I've used a backlit situation, right? You can see the sun is right behind the kids. You can see where the shadows are falling, but I've used an artificial light source. I've used a fill flash. All right. So I've forced some light onto the kids, because if I hadn't have done that, the kids would be just in shadow. All right. So I actually wanted the sunshine from behind them. I wanted the nice blue sky with the light from behind, but then I wanted to get right down on their level and throw some fill flash in there. All right. Here's another type of light source. This is stage lighting. So this is, I think, at the Arnott's Gala Ball. I can't remember the name of the singer, but she was up on stage. But the light source is coming from the left-hand side across her face. So we're getting some really nice mood there. We've got some of the blue lights in behind it just to give the whole situation some mood. So this is how a photographer works. A photographer uses the light that's there and knows how to manipulate the light. All right. And here's another example. This is probably seeing as where I thought I'll throw this one in because it's kind of appropriate because it's like lunchtime. How good does that salmon steak look? It looks pretty good, doesn't it? So this is using window light. So I haven't got any extra light sources on here, but the window light is actually behind the camera on my left-hand side. All right. So I've got this nice big open window just showing this beautiful soft light. And because it's nice and soft and diffuse coming in through the window, you've got this beautiful, nice light coming in, giving the subject some light there. So that's what any photographer is always looking for, is they're always looking for that nice, soft light. Now, here's some other light sources, right? So this is actually natural light, no fill flash. And this is some portrait work that I do. So this is just taking advantage of the natural light that's there. So you can see this little young fellow in the middle. There's some nice soft light coming from the right-hand side. We've got the three boys there. I'm just using the darker area behind them to light that. And then with the ones down here, I'm using the fence and I'm using some framing to sort of, give the image some focus. So no flash on any of those, just using the natural light that's there to create images. And that's probably what I do more than anything else, is I use the natural light to my advantage to create my images. All right, so let's have a little talk about light sources. Now, I even posed for these shots just for you guys, so I do apologize. I can tell you there's one thing, and I reckon the one industry that is going to get smashed above all others as soon as we open up, and I reckon that's hairdressers. All right, because I can tell you now, I'm very, very, very much looking forward to actually getting a haircut and getting this mop cut off. But if we have a look at this image here, right, so what I've done is I've just sort of I've just put up here some where the light is coming from, right? So we've got our camera in the middle. Our subject is, let's pretend it's us. So that's me looking at the camera. So the image down the bottom is what I would call backlighting, right? There's no light falling onto my face, right? And so light travels in straight lines, right? So what we're looking for is how do we get the light to physically travel onto our face, all right? So if I've got the backlit situation, there's no light falling on my face. You can see my eyes look dead. Do you know what I mean? There's no little catch lights in them. All right. But the one in the middle, I've got a side light. I've got one light off to the side. You can see that that's very, it's very moody. That's probably the most common, image that the children, I reckon, in our house would see. That's grumpy dad. You know what I mean? So that's that sort of, where I'm not looking all that happy, but it's nice and moody. And then up the top, we've got some nice soft light coming in. Now, I am a little bit unusual to most people doing a Zoom call. I've got 110 centimeter softbox, octabox up the top and a beauty dish on the other side. I mean, I've got to do what I can to try and make myself look good. But light is the key to that, to try and make things look better. So what we're looking for ideally is potentially some light coming from either the side and the front to fall onto the subject and not too much from behind. Right. So it is a bit of a balancing act, right? You want a little bit of light behind, but you also just want that light falling onto the face. And that's the key to it, is getting that light falling onto the face. All right. So let me just get on to the next slide. So online video calls, right? How do we've all seen some pretty terrible online video calls. Can any comments in the chat room of any bad examples we've seen there, Stacey, that anyone wants to mention? No? Okay. All right. So how do we improve them, right? So how do we make them look better? Now, we know that all of our laptops and iPads have all got cameras built into them, right? They've all got them built into them. So that's pretty normal, but we can do quite a lot to try and improve the actual image quality in them, right? So we can actually add a different camera, all right? So what we can also do, we can add some extra light, all right? We can also improve the audio, right? I don't know if you've noticed when I started talking this morning, right? But I've actually got a microphone in front of me rather than relying on the microphone of the actual iPad or laptop, all right? We can also have a look at the angles of the camera. All right. That is such a big one. Just by changing the angle of the camera. I actually had someone on a Zoom call the other night, lovely lady, but she was watching it on an iPad and the iPad was almost laying flat on the desk and I was looking straight up her nose for 2 hours. And I was just, anyway, I am going to have a little conversation with her later and just give her some tips to try and improve that and maybe use 2 screens, or maybe anyway, we'll figure something out. But the other thing is now some people love using the blur background of Zoom or any of those type things. That is something you can do, but just by having a look in the background and moving a few things, you can make a big difference to how your background looks. Like it's that, that classic image we saw. I don't know, most people would have seen that image with the guy that took the photo of, I think it was a kettle, and was trying to sell it online. And he actually took the photo of the kettle while he was naked. And there was a reflection of him in the actual shot. So just have a think about what's happening in the background, right? Make sure that, your husband's not going to walk through the back of your scene. And, that, if he's just jumped out of the shower and he's just trying to flex on the way across the room, or, might be, I don't know, but just have a think what's happening in the background and try and do things to eliminate where that might go wrong.
Ben, right. We have a question.
We have a question.
On
yes.
Light from Ellie.
Yep.
And she's asking, does light from an above source, for example, a light bulb, help or make lighting worse?
All right. So generally speaking, light from a light bulb won't be good light on your face, all right? Because it's traveling straight down, all right? Unless what I'd be trying to look at doing is using the light bulb. And I'm actually going to go live in a minute in here, and I've got some lights set up in the room so I can show you what happens when it's lit from above, when it's lit from the side, so it'll give you a really good example of what will actually happen when we change the direction, because I've got little remote controls on all my lights so I can turn them on and off, and we can have a bit of a play with that. So light from a room is good to light the room, but ideally we want something to light, and I'll show you in a minute, it doesn't have to be expensive, but even just a little ring light behind the screen or behind your laptop, just to give you that nice little, that nice soft light behind your face. That's the one you want. That's the beautiful light. All right. So let's talk about cameras first though, right? So we all know that our iPad, our laptops have all got this camera built in, but even I've got a $6,500 MacBook Pro, the latest 16-inch MacBook Pro, and it doesn't even have a full HD camera on it, 720p. And it's like the amount of money I spent on that laptop, the camera should be a bit better than that. But it's still pretty ordinary, right? So did anyone notice when we all were on, let me just stop sharing my screen just for a second. Hang on just 1 second. Let me go stop share. Can anyone see the difference between the picture quality of my camera and everybody else's? Yeah. All right. Mine's sharp and clear. I'm not using a web camera. I'm actually using one of my little mirrorless cameras as my webcam. All right. So I've got light on me and all that sort of stuff, but I'm actually using, and does anyone here have a camera that's, a couple of years old? Does anyone actually have a camera other than a phone? Anyway, yeah. Look, Bruce does, but that's all right. Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you, right? I just wanted to just have a look at that. Like that's the difference between a proper camera and then I haven't done any blurry backgrounds or anything like that. I'm actually using the lens to create a bit of black background blur for me so that I don't have to try and blur out the background with Zoom or anything like that. So I just wanted to show that just then. All right, so let's go back to share screen. All right, so let's just talk about cameras first, right? So now you can start with something very simple like this little Microsoft LifeCam, $90. It is going to be a dramatic improvement over your built-in camera. And there's two things that will happen, right? Is you notice that it sits on like a little mount system there. It's actually lifting the camera up a little bit as well. So rather than, as we were talking with that young lady I had the other night, she wasn't actually that young, but we won't talk about that. But I was looking up her nose for 2 hours. All right. So by having the camera mounted on top of your screen or even a little bit higher again, it's more flattering to have the camera a little bit higher. You can go a bit more expensive. And I mean, Logitech have so many, when I was looking at which cameras I should recommend for this course, it was just Logitech. I actually had to really struggle to find something that wasn't Logitech. So obviously Logitech and this whole lockdown thing and, social distancing and working from home, they're doing pretty well out of it, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. Start with something like about that $90 Microsoft LifeCam. It will improve your picture quality dramatically. And then you could go up to something then like the $200 Logitech C922 Pro Stream. It's got a microphone and everything built into it. It will be better, even audio quality than what the standard inbuilt mic. It's a bit like, what was that, Bruce?
How do you connect it, Ben?
Just plugs in via USB.
Oh, it's a USB input. Okay.
Yeah. So most of them just plug in via USB. And it just does everything via USB. And like that, they're designed to be simple to use. They're literally designed to be plug and play. And I think with the Logitech ones, there's some software that sits behind them as well that can then improve your audio quality as well as your picture quality. You can make some adjustments and make it like for Ellie. See how Ellie's got a little bit of light. She's got that harsh light coming onto a window. If she had something like one of the Logitech ones with the software, it then gives you some adjustment to make it a little bit darker so it's not quite so overexposed on your face. So this is, yeah.
I've been trying to, sorry to interrupt. I've been trying
that's right.
Trying to fix up my camera, and I can't find any settings anywhere on my computer to change anything.
Well, that's why Logitech make their own software, because then it allows you to then have that a bit of manipulation to the image to try and make it lighter or darker or now some cameras, right? So if you've got a reasonably new camera that's got a HDMI output, I know with all the Nikons now, Nikon have just released some software last year that turns any Nikon digital SLR into a webcam. So you can grab any Nikon DSLR, plug it in via HDMI, plug it into your computer via USB, and bang, away it goes. So like you don't even need to plug it in via HDMI, just plug the USB cord straight in. The software actually takes the video input from the camera and then allows you to then use that as a, I mean, look, I've got 4 cameras connected up today, and I'm going to try and show you what different angles, how to make it look good and how to make it look bad, including a phone. So we are going to go live after I finish talking a little bit so that I can show you some different examples of some what not to do. That maybe is not so flattering. So yeah, I'm going to put myself out there and hopefully you won't laugh too much. Anyway, all right. So I'm actually filming this today on a little Nikon Z5, which is the mirrorless range of cameras. So with the cameras that I shoot with for my job, I'm actually half what they call mirrorless and half DSLR. DSLRs were the traditional cameras that everyone's used for years. Mirrorless is a new technology, probably in the last 3 years it's come about. And so the whole body and mirror system is all much smaller because they've taken the mirror pentaprism out. And so the sensor's closer to the mount on the lens. The lenses are all smaller. So the whole idea behind it is that I'm not sacrificing image quality, but then I'm still getting better picture quality because, and also there's an old saying, right? The best camera you'll ever have is the one that you've got with you. All right. Now, who goes anywhere without their phone these days? We don't even go to the shop. If we go up to the shops, right? Like back when we're allowed to go out of the house, if we went to the shop, you wouldn't go to the shop without your phone, right? Because you'd walk out the door, you're like, oh, I haven't got my phone. All right. So we have these image recording devices with us all the time. And you know what? They can be I'd use my phone all the time to take pictures. They're great. But for me, the picture quality, right? And this is where I have a lot of people say to me, oh, look, my phone does a pretty good job. And while I agree with that, right? If phones in the last 5 years have improved in their picture quality, so has the picture quality of the cameras, because the technology actually comes from the cameras. So it's not just about, how many megapixels the actual camera has. If you think about it, right? So I'm going to stop share just for a minute, right? So this is one of my cameras here, right? Here we go. This is one of my little Nikon Z6s there at the moment, right? So if you think about how big the lens is, all right, and that's then the sensor inside there. All right, so that's the sensor that takes the picture. You can see that. All right, so if you have a look at the lens on your phone, all right, it's pretty small, right? So then imagine then how big the sensor is behind that, right? Relatively speaking, right? So if my lens was, that sort of that by, that round, right? So that the sensor was big. If you've got a little tiny lens, then the sensor is going to be really, really tiny as well. And so the bigger the sensor, the better the picture quality, right? And so that then comes into let me just go back to share screen. That then comes into these cameras as well, right? So it's not just about how many pixels the camera does it record in 1080. It's also to do with how big the sensor is inside the actual little webcam to how good a picture quality it actually puts out, right? Because my camera is only producing 1080p, right? So it's only full HD, which you'll probably find some of your cameras are doing as well. But if you look at the picture quality difference, it's because the sensor is physically much bigger. All right, so let's move on. Let's now have a talk. Is there any questions before I move on, any questions on what types of cameras are out there? No, good. Look, Officeworks, JB Hi-Fi, any of those places, Bing Lee, they've all got a million of them. My suggestion would be ask Dr. Google, just simply Google something, top 5 webcams in Australia. You don't have to search very far to see some, multiple reviews on which ones to look at. But realistically, as soon as you start going into something like a webcam, you should see a difference in your picture quality of your video calls. Now, light is the key. Light is what makes photographers and image creators worldwide. It doesn't matter if we're talking about, Kendall Jenner, you know what I mean? All of those type, influencers taking pictures. It's all about light. I think any influencer out there, if they don't have a ring light, which is one of these things here, I'd be absolutely shocked. All right. That little ring light, these little ring lights here, what it does is it actually produces a really nice, soft, natural light. Now you can see here, right? So this is This is exactly down the bottom here is exactly that's where I'm sitting at the moment. If you look carefully, you can see my garage door in the background there. Shh, don't tell anyone I'm not in the garage. I'm actually in my studio, but I've got my screen, microphone, but I've got what's over here is what's called a beauty dish, right? It's meant to make me look better. Doesn't really work so much, but look, you know what? If I was better looking, it'd probably make me look better. And then I've got this big thing here called an octabox, which is a big softbox. Now I'm using the lights that I would film my videos and stuff like that because they're sitting around doing nothing. So I might as well light my little studio, make it look nice. You don't have to go to that extreme though. Just simply putting something like a little LED light that clips onto your monitor, a little ring light like this one here that clips onto your monitor, one that sits behind your monitor and sits on a little light stand, anything like that is going to throw some light directly onto your face. So it doesn't matter so much if you've got light from behind you. Like look at Stacey's, right? Stacey's got a beautiful window. She's obviously up in the mountain. You're up the mountains, aren't you, Stacey? Yeah. So you can see she's got, we can see that she's in the mountain. She's up. It's a beautiful place to live, but there's not a lot of light on her face. So if she just had something simply like one of these little LED cubes, a little ring light sitting on the monitor, hang on, she's gone to get it, I'll bet. But anything like that, what that's going to do is give you some nice, soft, natural light. I call it natural light. It's artificial light, but it's going to give you that look of nice, soft, natural light onto your face. Now, as I said, there's heaps of options out there. They start from around $40. And hang on, is Stacey got a ring light? Yeah, this 100. And that most of them also have, right? Say, for instance, when we were talking about Ellie's got that bright light coming in there, right? If she even just pulled that window, is there a blind that you could pull down, Ellie? Yeah. Even if you just played with that and just pulled the blind down a little bit, especially if the blind's a little bit translucent, you know what I mean? Like that might just soften that light on your side a little bit. So, Stacey, have you got your ring light on yet?
I do, but see, it's not making a difference. I think it's because it's crap. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Look, potentially, is there a turn on, like brighter button on it or not?
Yeah. Oh, there's a softer. I don't know. Is that making a difference? Probably not. Probably only if I wasn't in natural light. Maybe it's not particularly.
It's just so with any constant output light, like little LEDs, they do need to be bright enough to be able to overcome the natural light. Right? Ellie's gone to shut that blind. I can tell she's
Ellie's also got a question.
Yep.
Do you want to ask it, Ellie, or do you want me to ask?
Yeah, ask away.
Okay, so she's saying she has a ring light as well.
Yep.
But it has a few settings, I guess, which is what mine has as well.
Yep.
And she's asking what would be the best to use for work calls.
Oh, look, there is no, I mean, it depends on how you want to look, right? So if you have a look at, I just found this image on the internet. You can see that, this girl here obviously likes to have a bit of a tan. This one naturally has darker skin. This one here is a little bit more olive. And this guy here is pretty much, he's fairly, light skinned, right? So it depends on what you want to look like. So they usually have settings like warmer or cooler. Same as, the LED lights you can get in your house now. You buy a warm bulb or you buy a cool bulb. Generally speaking, the warmer the light, the better for people's skin, because people do like to look a little bit, a little bit tanned and a little bit looking quite nice. But you've got to have enough light to actually overcome what's there. So sometimes like these little cubes, and look, it does come down to money, right? The more money you spend, the better light you're going to get. Yeah. So if you were doing it at night, all right, and then this is where, right, your picture quality also improves. Has anyone ever heard of a term called ISO? Who used to buy rolls of film? Did anyone here used to buy rolls of film? Yeah, see, I'm just showing my age when I talk about rolls of film, right? So hang on, we've actually got, I'm going to go stop share just for a minute. Hang on, I'm back. These things, hang on, let me just put it there. A bit of Ektachrome film. Now see how it's got 100 written on it, right? Ektachrome 100. So that was an ISO 100 speed film. Now, you used to go into the camera shop and you go, can I get some fast film because I'm going to go and shoot some action? Now, that doesn't actually equate, like it's not exactly how it works, but generally speaking, right? So you bought a higher ISO film, you might have gone and bought a 400 speed film, or if you're really going nuts, you might have remembered buying an 800 speed film. So the higher the ISO, the more sensitive to light. And so that's where the better quality cameras as well, when you get a better quality camera, as the light drops a bit lower, what's going to happen is the picture quality is actually going to still look good. Whereas the cheaper cameras, as that sensitivity to light tries to turn up, the picture quality does deteriorate quite quickly. So look, that yet again, that comes down to the quality of the camera they actually buy. But if you can then add some light in to help the camera, so my lights, right? So if I just turn my lights off quickly, you'll see that's one light off. So I've got just my beauty dish up there. All right. Or I can turn the other side off, turn the beauty dish off. So you can see that it's the different light sources on my face, or I can turn the background light off as well. So I'm just using different, and I can turn them up and down from here, but you guys don't need to spend, but they're not actually that expensive. Funnily enough, these little LED lights I use, they're only about $200 a light. So they're not, do you know what I mean? They're not like $1,000 a light or anything like that. So there are options out there that are reasonably inexpensive that would make a significant difference. And like these lights, so if I just, what I'll do, I'll go, let me show you something. I'm going to go, let me go to, let me just close that. Is it camera 2? Yes, there we go. Let me just get into focus. There we go. So you can actually see I've got that big light up there, and I've got the beauty dish there, and that's what you guys are all seeing there. So yeah, that's just, that's how I've got mine set up. Now, obviously, like I'm running online photography sessions. So, I'm doing it, probably 1 or 2 nights a week. Maybe you're not doing it that many times, but there certainly are things that you can do to improve that picture quality a little bit. All right, share screen. Okay. So in regards to light, starts from about $40 and just goes upward from there. Anything you add to it will certainly help. All right, now audio. Now, I did a video course at Australian Film and Television School. It's probably about 6 years ago now. And one of the lecturers said something, and I've got to say it really stuck with me, right? And you'll know this from watching online video, tutorials and things like that. You only notice bad audio, right? Picture quality can be a little bit crappy at times, and we're happy to put up with that. But as soon as someone's audio goes from, like either just really crappy sounding or really like they're sitting in the toilet, or, they're really distant, or they're going loud, soft, like that's something that we notice a lot, right? So like there's so many options of inexpensive microphones that will give you a much better result than the inbuilt microphone on, it's a bit like a race car. All right. If we think about it, use the analogy of a race car, right? So we've got a car that can do 200 kilometers an hour down the straight. If you've got the standard tires on it, you got to go around a corner and it's not going to want to go around the corner. So you've got this beautiful device, but then half of the job is not done. So by improving the audio quality, and as I said, yet again, these are also, most of them plug in via USB. All right. So a lot of them plug into USB. So you just simply have an adapter on the side there, and then bang, we've got, a much better quality audio signal coming out versus just the standard microphone on the computer. So has anyone noticed that in any Zoom calls where, someone sounds really nice on their audio, and then you've got someone that sounds like they're sitting in a toilet echoing? Yeah. So that is just, look, there's lots of other things you can do to improve audio, but for something like a Zoom call, if you just add a simple USB mic, I've listed some brands here. Sennheiser, I do a bit of work for Sennheiser, so I do like the Sennheiser guys. They are a really nice bunch of people. They do sort me out with some nice microphones from time to time. But Blue, there's some great little Blue microphones, as well as Rode. The one up the top here, it's one of my favorites from Blue, and the one down the bottom from Rode. They just plug straight into the USB. They're simple to easy to use, and you've got You can also plug headphones in as well. So, you know, if you're trying to get that better, like, you know, you want to hear the call better, it all works in one. So they are quite inexpensive to fix up the audio part, but that is a massive part that can make your end production value and what you look like to you, whether it be to clients or just you want to make yourself look better for the meetings. They're just a couple little things that can make a massive difference. All right, now camera angles and backgrounds. Now, okay, so one of the biggest things I'll say here, right? Now, this is what made me put this image in is just that lady the other night, because literally that was the view I got of her for 2 hours. Was literally, she had the iPad sitting on the desk, almost flat, and I was looking straight up her nostrils, right? So even simply, right, if you haven't even gone out and bought like a laptop stand, even just sitting your laptop, if you're not going to buy a microphone, you're not going to buy a camera, just by like putting the laptop on a couple of books so the camera angle is up closer to your face versus actually, do you want to do that for me, Stace? Do you want to pick your laptop up? There we go. She's on mute, but that's right. We get the idea, right? So
yes,
just by
I've got
lifting,
it on a shoebox.
there we go. There we go. So she's already lifted hers up,
Yeah.
but even lifting it up a little bit more and try and get it to eye height, because the old photographic rule is when it comes to photographing people, and it's the same concept, right? We're doing video calls, but it's the same concept. You should be a little bit higher than your subject. So if we look at my setup here, right? Hang on, let me just come back to, let me just go out of screen share. All right. My camera is actually, let me just zoom in on it, is sitting there. So it's actually up a little bit higher. So it's actually up a little bit higher than me. All right. So it's trying to make me look less chunky because there's a few COVID kilos on at the moment. And it's like I'm looking down on myself to try and hide my multiple chins that are happening down here. All right. So that's that camera angle, just by lifting your laptop up a little bit, will make a massive difference. All right. Let me just go slideshow from current slide. There we go. All right. So anything you do to lift that laptop up will help massively. Now, if even simply, right now, let's have a talk about backgrounds. Now, I'm actually pleased to say that there's no naked people walking through the back of anyone's images here, which is good. Hopefully everyone's also got dressed today and put pants on. If it was me, I know some people only dress the top half at the moment and don't worry about the bottom half, because I guarantee if you do that, you're going to get up and walk away and then someone's going to see more than they bargained for. So I would personally, if it was me, I would be making a full effort rather than half an effort. But look, that, you know, go nuts on that one, kids. But have a look in your background, right? Just by simply, like, I'm personally not a massive fan of the blurry background in Zoom. All right. But if you are going to do that, the plainer the background you've got to start with, the easier that is for Zoom to make that happen. All right. So if you've got a background that's got like Stacey's, right, where there's a window and there's different things to it, Zoom would struggle more with trying to make that background blurry, whereas Ellie actually has a reasonably plain background to start with. All right. So if you are going to use the backgrounds that are in, you know, Zoom and stuff like that, try and keep it as plain as possible. Actually, everyone's got a nice background at the moment. So everyone's, I've got to say, tick on that one, you know, and Bruce has got that nice image in the background there. I really like, it's a nice funky windows as well. Like it, do you know what I mean? I like to see what's happening in, you know, behind people. So just, you can select a whole heap of backgrounds there, but I like to see where the person is, because it just makes me feel like I'm a little bit closer to them rather than, you know, anything like that, right? So let me just see if we can go live here, right? Let me just unlock the iPad. All right, let me go into camera. All right, so I'm going to go out of that, stop share. All right, so let me just turn that around. So this is the worst angle, right? So I'm going to go to camera. I think it's camera 3. There we go. So that's the iPad on the desk look. All right, now that just does my head in. But some people do that in the Zoom call, right? They sit their iPad on the desk and, you know, like then they look at the screen. And so we're actually just looking straight up their nose, right? So that's not my preferred option. So if you can steer away from, but even getting something to mount, if you're going to do it on an iPad, get something to lift your iPad up and lift it up a bit higher. So let me see if I can now go to All right, we're going to go to camera 4. Okay. Doesn't want to play with me now. All right, so now we've gone, I've lifted the camera up a little bit higher. If I actually even had the camera straight, that would probably be even better. But like you can see the difference there, right? Just now, that's off my phone, but you can see just now we're looking, I'm looking, it's looking down at me. The camera's gone up a bit higher. I can even adjust it if I want. I can zoom in a little bit, zoom in. So there's a few things you can do just by, you can use your phone as an extra camera with your computer a lot as well, just by plugging in the USB. So I don't know if you know that you can do that, right? So if you can plug your phone in, plug your iPad and actually use the camera on that externally versus using your, rather than just using the built-in camera. All right. So, but then you come back to that view and like, it's just, it's much more pleasing. All right. But let's just have a quick demo on some lights, right? So let me just turn that one off. So this is, I've got now, like you can see the difference, right? So I've got no light coming under my face and yet it's only a fluoro tube in here. So it's not actually that bright. But that light that's lighting the background, see the light's not really falling onto my face. Like you can see it's coming in here, but it's not falling onto my face, right? So by say, for instance, opening up a window, putting a little LED light on, do you know what I mean? Like it just kind of completes the picture. Let me just turn, I can't stand looking at that iPad image, the iPad image, that just does my head in, just looking straight at my nostril. It's just not a good look. And we probably don't need to see me up there anymore either. All right, so let me just go back to share screen. So I just wanted to show you, right, what happens when we change the camera angles, right? So I've got as I said, my Z5 is my video camera and it's looking a little bit above my eyes, looking down at me. So even if you're not going to use an extra camera, you're just going to use your laptop, lifting it up higher, so it's, and tilting the screen a bit more forward, you're going to massively make a big difference there. All right, now we've covered off the zoomy sort of stuff. Now let's talk a little bit about photography. All right, is everyone happy to keep going? Cool. All right. Okay. So we're going to run through lens choice, apertures, how to achieve that nice out of focus area, and then a little bit about ISO. All right. So different angles of views using different lenses. Now, has anyone bought a camera in the last 10 years? Yes? No? Makes me so sad. No, not a phone. It's not a camera. I saw that, Ellie. All right. A phone is a phone that has a camera attached to it, right? And as I said, yes, it does a better job than it used to 5 years ago, right? But if you were to go and print things from that and try and make printed copies, the picture quality is not going to be as good as what you think it is because you're only viewing that on a fairly small screen. All right. Now, with an interchangeable lens camera, right? We used to call them, the only ones that we had were DSLRs. Now we have this new technology called mirrorless. And as I said, for my own stuff, I'm half in each. All right. I've got half mirrorless and half DSLR. Now, the reason that I haven't gone full mirrorless is it's a bit to do with cost, because for the last 2 years, we've been dealing with COVID and, it's been a challenge at times. And I'm probably going to need to drop about 20 grand to go full mirrorless, but also there are things that my DSLR cameras do that I love that my mirrorless ones don't yet. So, but then there's things that the mirrorless ones do that the DSLRs don't. So I've got a bit of both, and they do what I need them to do, but I have interchangeable lens cameras, right? Because it's the lens that makes the picture. So remember when we used to be able to go outside and go places, right? So this is up at Lady Macquarie's chair. Right now, this is with an ultra wide angle lens. Now, with any of these shots, I haven't moved anywhere. All I'm doing is changing the lens on the camera. So this is what they call a 14mm lens, ultra wide angle. From Mrs. Macquarie's chair, you can see the whole of the Harbour Bridge, North Sydney. It looks beautiful, right? I zoom into 24. So when you used to buy like a twin lens kit with an interchangeable, you probably find some of you would have bought that when you bought a camera, you bought like a twin lens kit. So this is then starting to get to the zoom length of that twin lens kit, from wide angle to a bit of zoom. So you can see now that I'm zooming. I'm not walking closer. The lens is changing the angle of view, and I'm starting to get it a bit closer. But that would be the standard kit lens that comes with most SLR mirrorless cameras. Is this 24 to 70 is about what you'd normally start with. All right. I can then go up to 80 millimeters, 200 millimeters. So if you bought a twin lens kit, you probably would have got an extra lens. This might have got you to here, or then we can go up to 400 mil, right? So we've now, without changing locations, just by changing the lens, the perspective of what I can photograph has massively changed. All right. So that's what I can see from wide angle with not changing places, just physically changing lenses. I can zoom all the way into that little red dot in the middle there, which is pretty cool. And that's just physically, that's the benefit of an interchangeable lens camera, is that the lens is what takes the picture, and I can create different perspectives by changing lenses. Okay, so next slide. All right, now, has anyone heard of this term called aperture? So we all have these apertures built into our eyes, right? The little iris in your eye, right? It actually opens and closes to let more light in, right? So when you're in a dark room, the little irises in your eyes open up to let more light in. When they go out to bright sunlight, they close down to stop the light coming in. In the camera world, by changing this little aperture, it also changes how much of the photo is in or out of focus. So on the image on the right-hand side, you can see that that's probably, I'd call that more a landscape type scene where more of the photo is in focus. Whereas the shot on the left, if you're using the scene programs on your cameras, so you might have a little compact camera that's got like portrait mode, landscape mode. These are the effects that the camera is trying to create. So this one on the left, we can see just the one bit of that Melbourne sign is in focus, and then everything else has gone blurry. All right. So by using this thing called an aperture, that we control the camera, we can actually control how much of the photo is in or out of focus. And this is a sort of thing, if anyone's got something like an iPhone, I think it was 11 or 12 it started on, you have that little aperture control on your iPhone. You can create this effect a little bit. So that's
Ben, that was my question, because is it fair to say, I'm not sure if I think everybody here has a phone camera, but I'm not sure about an actual camera. Is there for today's purposes, is there settings on an iPhone
absolutely
that can have this similar effect that we could maximize? Because I know I don't maximize the full capacity of my iPhone.
So all right, so if I just I'm going to stop sharing screen for a minute. I want to show you something. Hang on. Let me just go stop share. So on the back of your camera, like mine's an iPhone 12. See, I've got 3 lenses. All right. So what it is, those 3 lenses are actual 3, rather than having a zoom lens that zooms in and out. There's not enough room in that little bit of space for anything to move. All right. So that's why there's multiple lenses on the back of that camera. All right. And so what happens is, let me just plug this one back in again.
And Ellie's asking about Samsung phones, and they're similar.
Same thing. Exactly. Doesn't matter about brand. It's just, it's what I happen to have with me. Let me go to camera 4. No, we don't need to look at me anymore. All right. So when we have a look at my little scene over here, all right, we can tell it to focus on something, but we can also see up the top there, that little aperture.
I don't think I have.
All right. And see, you can actually slide this up and down. All right. Can you all see that happening? All right. So when you've got more distance, right, on a phone, it doesn't work well in a little macro scene. But try playing with that little. So what you do is you press the F number, which actually is an aperture on a camera, and you'll see these little numbers appear, right? So if you set it on 1.4, all right. Sorry, I'll just move my thumb out of the way. Set it on 1.4, and it should be very similar on it might just on a Samsung not be called exactly the same thing, but I don't have a Samsung to be able to show you, so I can't show you what it looks like. But when we do that, we can then start to.
How did you get to that screen? My screen doesn't look like that.
What camera you got? What phone?
Oh, it's probably the latest one. This one.
iPhone 12. So it should be. Are you in portrait mode on the actual camera?
Oh, I don't know.
See, these are all things I haven't played with either.
All right. So you can see we've got Stacey in the. So see if you have a look at the screen. So I've got photo.
Portrait, yeah, but I'm on portrait. Oh, I see.
Right?
There.
So how portrait's actually doing that, right? How portrait mode is actually doing that is it's actually taking 2 photos with each lens.
Oh.
All right. And then trying to create that depth of field image by joining those 2 photos together. That's why they've got multiple lenses in there, is to try and help create that depth of field, because it's not possible to do it on such a small device, but they're using software technology to try and recreate it. It's not the same as what you can do on a camera. All right. So did you find it, Stacey?
Well, I didn't realize that you can also use, there's a natural light setting and you can turn it up or down, and there's all kinds of fun and funky things.
So, right, so here's a camera, right? Let me go to this one here, right? So you'll see up on my screen, I've got a little camera set up here, right? So I'm using the aperture, right? The aperture on my camera. I'm using it, and let me just take a photograph. All right, and so I have this thing called depth of field now. All right, so see the little car in the background is out of focus, and the one in the front is in focus. The secret to this is distance between subject and background. So if you're going to use it in your phone and use that portrait mode in your phone, you need about 1 meter or 2 distance, and your phone actually comes up and tells you, move further away. Like, they're pretty smart, right? They're looking at, because the phone's focusing, going, well, this thing is really close. I can't, that doesn't work. So, but if you have a bit of distance between subject and background, then that will make it easier to work. All right. So there are some cool settings we can play with in the phone. And like all of this, as I said before, right? If phones have gotten better, cameras have also gotten better, because the technology hasn't been invented for phones. The technology has come down from the camera industry, and they've figured out ways to put it into phones, because, as I said before, the best camera you'll ever have is the one you got with you, right? And we don't go anywhere without our phone. So that's why has been that push of that technology being fed in there, but it's not the same as what a camera is. But it's all this dependent on how much stuff you want to carry.
So if I go up to 16 f-stop, it'll give me a greater depth of field, more will be in focus.
Correct.
Front. Okay.
Yep. But if you go to 1.4, so the small number, it'll really, and you can edit on a phone, you can edit the photo afterwards. Now, the reason you can do that is because it's software driven.
Right.
And it's on a camera, right? So let me take another photo on my camera. All right. Now watch this, right? I'm changing the aperture. Hang on, wrong camera, that one. All right. So let me change. So all I'm changing now, if you see the little, it says F4. All right. If I change it, now you'll see it's changing. If I put it on, say, F11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's come back to F11. Let's take the photo, focus on the front tire. And let's have a look at the 2 different.
Yep, got it.
See the difference?
Yeah. Now, why does that setting not come up on a normal photo? Why do you have to go to portrait?
Because generally on a portrait mode, well, they're trying to make it simple for people, right? Yeah. So that when you go into portrait mode on a phone, it's actually bringing in that second lens and using software to bring the 2 photos together.
Well, I'd never used the portrait mode because I don't know. I just thought, I'm not taking portraits. I'm taking like pictures of a mountain or something.
But all the portrait mode is trying to do, as I said, is it's just bringing in that second lens technology and trying to then use software to join them together. But look, there are a heap of things in your phone that it's technology from cameras that they've gone, well, we can make that work software wise in our phones. So
yeah,
cool.
Okay. So you could take everything on portrait.
Look, yes and no, right? There are some photos where you're taking things and your camera will come up and say, you got to move closer, you got to move further away. because what it's trying to do is find something in the foreground, something in the background, and show you that little out of focus area. So I wouldn't leave it in portrait mode all the time, but if you're trying to take a photo and you want to create a bit of distance and make that blurry background and look like Ellie does on her Zoom calls, that portrait mode in there is what that's designed to do.
Okay.
All right, guys, we are nearly finished. Let me just finish off here. So we actually I was going to go from here and then go into live view mode, but we did that anyway. So that was what I was going to talk about next. Now, this is something we can't really control on a camera, on a phone, is these things called shutter speeds. All right. Now, this is probably the next area that'll probably start to come into phones. Phones are now starting to take the thing called RAW files, and there are some software apps you can put on your phone where you can control things a little bit more. But this is what a photographer uses day in and day out to create different effects, apertures and shutter speeds. Right. And it used to be this thing years ago, when we were shooting film, that it was a little bit like white man magic. The photographer would take a cool photo and he wouldn't tell anyone how he did it. And because we didn't have this thing called digital technology that then showed you all the settings that he used, to be like, wow, how did they do that? Whereas now with a digital photo, all the information about the photo is all stored with it when they take a photo. So it is a lot easier to learn now. But if we play with these things called shutter speeds, right? So it's a measurement of time, and it's how long the little shutter unit is open and closed to let light in. And it's the main thing that we use to control movement, right? So this is a 1 second exposure. So obviously the camera needs to be still. So it needs to be on a tripod, on a little stand, something like that to hold it still. So at 1 second, you can see that the shutter was open for 1 second, click. And so the people were walking through the photo. At 1/4 of 1 second, you can see that the shutter speed's a bit shorter. There's a little bit, we can see a dog in the photo. We can see a little bit more of the people. As we move to 1/15 of 1 second, a shorter time again, the people are becoming more visible. And we move to 125th. And then all of a sudden we can see the man, we can see his hand, we can see his cigarette. We can see all of that detail. So shutter speed is what controls movement. Now, there's sometimes that we'd use fast shutter speeds, right? So I was up at Glenbrook Skate Park, and there was this kid doing these tricks, and I was actually laying on the edge of the skate park and get him to jump over the top of me. And I've used a shutter speed of 1/2000th of 1 second. So very fast, to stop the action, because I wanted him literally stationary in the air. I didn't want any movement. I just wanted him just like literally hanging in the air for no reason. All right. But then here's an example of where I've used a slow shutter speed. So this is a 30-second exposure. So 30 seconds is a very long period of time, camera on a tripod. And this is how we create these little star trails, these little lights of the cars traveling. So you can see cars have driven through the photograph in that period of 30 seconds. Now, obviously, yet again, camera on a tripod. Camera's got to be stationary, because that's what keeps all the face in the middle, all of the stuff that's not moving in the photo sharp and clear. Whereas, the cars are all moving. You can see that the car's parked there probably for half the exposure. So this is another technique that photographers use to create effects, is we use shutter speeds to either stop movement or create some movement to create some effects. All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is this is just a little bit about composition. Now, this doesn't matter if I'm talking about it on a phone. Doesn't matter if I'm talking about it on a camera, right? Composition is what we see when we look at the photograph. Now, I love using leading lines, right? I love using lines in photographs. Now, I'm in this image here. This was actually shot at a place down south between Ulladulla and Bateman's Bay called Durras Lakes. Beautiful spot if you get when we're allowed to travel again, if you can ever get down there. But I'm laying on the middle of the road taking this shot because I want the lines to come right out of the middle, and I want a person's eye to be guided straight through the middle of it. Right. And then on the shot on the left-hand side, has anyone ever tried this called burning steel wool? Right. Oh. Don't do it anywhere near bush. It's not an end good. It doesn't end well. So the first time I tried it, I might've done it where there was some stuff that could have caught fire. I was quite lucky. It could have gone a lot worse than it did. And then I perfected the technique. So I actually did it near water where nothing can catch fire. So what I've actually done is I've lit the steel wool. We've got a 30-second exposure. I've had the steel wool attached to a piece of wire and I've swung it around and walked through the photo while it's spinning. And yet again, I'm using those lines to create effects in the shot to make the eye of the person looking at the photo look straight through the middle. So there are lots of different things we can do, right? We can also frame the subject. Yet again, we could do this on a phone. You know, you could use your portrait mode. Now, this is probably the most popular place in Penrith to take photos, down at Tench Avenue. Everybody, look, it's one of my favorite spots to shoot. I can't help it. It's a good little spot. Works in the morning, works in the afternoon, but you know, every photographer and their dog goes down there and shoots down there. But that old fence around there, I'm actually using the fence and the trees, and notice I'm down at the kids' level. Right? A lot of people, when they take photos of kids, they stand up tall and they look down at them. Right. And what did I say before when we're talking about that, trying to create that depth of field? The secret to that is distance between subject and background. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm on the same level as them. So I'm approachable to the kids, but how much distance is there between this kid's face and that background? Probably 50, 60 meters. Whereas if I was standing up and looking down, the angle of view, there'd be maybe a meter behind the kid. So there's no distance for that lens to be able to blur that background. So I'm using the framing technique, but I'm also using that distance between subject and background to really make those people stand out like a portrait. And the shot on the left-hand side, like I'm using overhanging trees. Yet again, doesn't matter if I'm using a phone, if what I'm using, right? I'm just using objects in the scene to try and frame the photograph. Yep. There's just a couple little tips anyway. So look, I appreciate everybody listening to me today. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you've learned a couple of things. Hopefully the quality of our Zoom calls can get better and no one's going to walk naked through the back of your shots. But no, anyway, that's just, does anyone have any questions? I know we've asked a couple of questions along the way. Did anyone have anything they want to ask me now? Siri's listening to me again. Anyway, so any questions, guys?
Oh, it's been good. Thank you.
I expect all our upcoming Zoom chamber events to look amazing from here on.
So just think about the direction of the light, right? So Ellie, I know you think I've picked on you today, right? But I haven't, right? You've got some nice light falling onto your face, all right? It's just because you've got no adjustment on your camera, you can't, if you could just make it a little bit darker, then all of a sudden that would make that look a lot better, right? So if you haven't got the adjustment, even just by trying to pull the blind down or maybe, you know, putting a big piece of white sheet over the window, anything like that to try and soften the light down and just reduce it a little bit would make it look better.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jackie, nothing from you? You've been very quiet today, Jackie. Same with you, Susan.
Thank you, Ben. I'm just going to hit stop on recording now. Hang on.
That's fine.